If you see one in the sky, if you see one manifest before your very eyes, if you see a strange creature looking outside, then tell it on accounts of the paranormal. Hear it on accounts of the paranormal. Welcome to accounts of the paranormal.
Welcome to the show. Tonight I speak with Michael, who comes to us from Arizona, sharing his eerie experiences while working the graveyard shift at the historic Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, from shadowy figures and ghostly encounters to the unsettling atmosphere surrounding the hotel. Michael recounts his transformation from a skeptic to a firm believer in the paranormal. Michael, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me on it.
I appreciate you being here. You've got some really cool story at a very historic place, the legendary Roosevelt Hotel in Hollywood. What a fantastic place. And I'm excited to hear about what you experienced there. This hotel goes back to 1927. When I was looking into some of the history of it, I learned it was financed by some legendary Hollywood luminaries, Douglas Fairbanks, Mary Pickford, Louis B. Mayer, Sid Grauman. It was the place where the first Academy Awards were held in the Blossom Ballroom in May 16th, 1929. And you have your history there. You worked there. You were security for the graveyard shift at this hotel that is known for being haunted with some notable spirits, actually. Marilyn Monroe, who actually stayed and had a suite there. Montgomery Clift, who stayed there on the 9th floor for about 3 months when he was filming From Here to Eternity. And people have claims of hearing a trumpet coming from that floor that he stayed on because he actually practiced the trumpet when he was there. Carol Lombard as well, spotted on the 12th floor there. And then numerous other sightings. It's about a young girl is said to haunt the hotel. But I'm sure you're going to be able to tell me some of these sightings from your time there, especially working the graveyard shift. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about your history and what brought you to Hollywood, to working at the Roosevelt, and what were your feelings or your thoughts on the paranormal before you started there?
Well, when I growing up, my grandma and my mom, I remember when I was a kid, they would, when family would get together, they would start talking about, oh, hey, remember the time we went to look at that house we were going to buy and the door opened for you and they had said somebody died there. So I knew my grandma, she was always in touch with the paranormal, it seemed. And she always had, ghost stories when I was a kid growing up. So that's why I became aware of it and I was always curious about it. And then not till I got older and mainly when I started working at the Roosevelt Hotel is when because I was pretty much a skeptic. I was just like, okay, that's a cute story. But then when I started working at the Roosevelt Hotel, I became a firm believer in the other side. That's for sure.
And when did you start working there about?
Well, I had came to Hollywood in 1990, and a friend of mine that I knew, he lived there, and I was looking for some work. So he said that he could hire me. He was in charge of the security department at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. So I took the job, and he said, but the only shift open is the graveyard shift. And I said, well, that's cool because I'm more of a night person anyway. So I started working there, and in the beginning, I was just gathering the information, and I was like, wow, this is such a cool place, and finding out all the history and everything about it. And then as the weeks went on, they would pair me with different other officers who were kind of training me. So they would kind of let me go off and do a patrol by myself, just to get the hang of it. And then sometimes they would go with me and show me, the proper procedures and how to call reports in on the radio and fill out the reports and, etc. Things like that. And then I noticed after a while they'd let me go on my own, and then when I'd come back, they kept saying, "Is everything okay? Anything strange happening?" I was like, "No, just a regular patrol." And then I got curious, and I was like, "Why are they always asking me that?" But I never really, delved into it. And then as I got better at my job, and they would let me go on my own more, they started asking me to work double shifts. So there'd be a time when I'd work like 2 or 3 days in a row, like night and day. So I remember one evening, this is what kicked the whole ball rolling. This one night, I had done a couple double shifts. So they said, "Hey, the supervisor, they said, hey, we're going to go ahead and give you a room at the end of your shift so you can go ahead and just, sleep a whole 8 hours if you need to, just to rest up." And I was excited about that because I was like, wow, cool. I always wanted to stay in this place, after I learned the history of it. So after my shift, I said, okay, I'll go ahead and take that room now. So they told me where it was. I got my key from the front desk, and I was still in my uniform and everything because I had to come back to work, the next shift. So this was like well after midnight. They had let me go ahead and take my break. So I went up to the room. I think it was like on the third or fourth floor in the tower. So I went into my room, and I was so amazed because it still had like the old, like from the 20s, 30s, and 40s, like solid wood doors, like on the closet, and those really uh, big brass, doorknobs and everything. So I was just kind of looking at the room and, taking it all in. So then I got undressed and hung my pants over a chair and, my shirt and jacket and tie and everything. And then I was laying down in the bed, and I had just left a nightlight on the stand. And I was just thinking how cool that was. So I started falling asleep, and I heard ding. I heard the doorknob to the closet open, and I was like, "What?" So I laid there for a couple of minutes, and then the door like kind of creaked open a little bit, like about 2 inches. So I got up slow, and I walked over to the closet door, and I opened it, and I felt like this, like a breath, and it was dark in there because all I had was the little nightlight on the on the stand. So I like went into the closet, and I saw this. It was because it was black in the closet, and the shadow shaped figure was like darker than the darkness in the closet, so it stood out. And then I heard like this like this way deep rumbling, like a growl. So I like looked at it face to face. There was no eyes or anything, but I could see the definite face. So I like slammed the door, grabbed the chair, stuck it under the doorknob, and just grabbed my clothes and just ran down the hallway in my boxers and, carrying all my clothes, ran back down to the security booth. And then I ran in there all panic and everything. And those two guys that were always asking me, is everything okay? Just looked at me, and then they looked at each other. And then I was like, they were like, what happened? And so I told them. And then I said, you guys, what's going on? So they looked at each other. And then they said, well, we probably should have told you this place is haunted. So I was like, well, thanks for telling me now, so.
Yeah, that wasn't in the job description, I guess, but funny how they definitely knew when you started, especially how they were asking you initially if everything was okay. What do you think that was that you saw?
Because I'm not, I'm a practical person. I'm not like, make up stuff and this and that. I'm like, if I see something, I'll say what I saw. Or if somebody has a question, I'll give them a direct answer. And the only way I can describe it, it was a bona fide, the darkest of dark shadow figure. It was like a human figure. There was a head and shoulders, and we were like face to face. And that growl was just like it was like I can't even describe it, or I can't even imitate it. But it was just like I was freaked out.
That is insane. Yeah, I would have been freaked out too. That's crazy. Did they report that that particular shadow figure had been seen, or had anyone else reported seeing that particular thing?
No, they didn't. No, nobody had mentioned anything about it, but they just told me, well, we should have told you, the place is haunted. And then we did in the security department, though, have a separate file at that time. I don't know if they still have it. We would report or paranormal incidents. So we had, I filled out a report on it. That told me, I go, well, obviously I'm not the only one this happens to, so.
Where did you end up staying that night? I imagine you did not go back to that particular room.
No, I just I redressed in the office, and I just said, hey, I'm ready to go back to work. So I just, clocked back in.
Wow, I guess the adrenaline kicked in and you were ready for another shift.
Oh yeah, I was like, it like majorly, uh, I knew something was different. Like I said, that was, if I had to pick any moment, that was, okay, I'm a believer now. You know what I mean?
For sure. And what are your feelings on what it was?
Well, looking back now, and then, because I've read up on some of the history of the hotel, and then I've even seen a couple programs on it. Um, they had like on the haunted mirror from Marilyn Monroe's room, and then the story about Montgomery Clift's room. And I have an incident I'll tell you about later on too that happened at the Montgomery Clift room. But anyway, now looking back at it, I can say, okay, well, that makes sense. But it would have been nice to have been informed, ahead of time that things like that were reported to have happened. But so I just kind of found out cold turkey about it. But
What happened next? What was your next experience?
then the next one was I was on patrol, and by that time they had hired a couple more people, and I had referred a couple friends of mine. So I had two friends, Kenny and Todd. So we both worked there too on the graveyard shift. And then we would, one time he would stay in the office and I would go on patrol, and vice versa. We would switch it up. So it was my turn, and I said, okay, I'm going to go on the tower patrol. So went to the lobby, got in the elevator, went up to the third floor. I'd start on the third floor and, just go through each level, patrolling, checking the doors and making sure the hallways, nobody was in there and all that kind of stuff. So I got off on the elevator on the third floor, and right as you exit the elevator to the right, make a left and you go down the hallway. So I just, started walking and, checking the rooms and everything. And then all of a sudden, I just like about halfway down, I was like, I felt this like a presence, like when you're around people and you can feel somebody behind you and you don't even see them. So I felt like this presence, and I was like, what? So I like stopped and I looked around, and then I, walked a couple more steps slowly. And then on the carpet, just uh, like 2 feet ahead of me, I could see like indentations. And I was like, what? So then I stopped. And at that time, the presence got closer and it actually pushed me into the wall in the hallway. And I fell down, and then I just jumped up and ran down to the stairway, and then ran back down to the office. And I told my friend Todd what was going on because I had told him about that first experience I had. So then we locked up the office and both went, patrolling again, and but nothing happened after that to both of us. But so yeah, that was the second like revelation that yeah, there's something going on here for sure.
And that didn't make you quit, huh? You're a trooper.
No, because like I said, I've always been interested, since I was a kid, hearing my grandma and mom and everybody tell ghost stories. So, and I just have like an adventure kind of a feel, spirit about me anyway, I guess. So I'm more intrigued by something than I am scared of it. I like to I want to know the answer to something. You know what I mean?
Sure, sure. And that's great, especially being there. That was definitely helpful. This was on the third floor. Did you say that the room you stayed at, I think that was the third floor as well, right?
Yeah, it was either the third or the fourth, and I'm figuring it was the third because that's like I said. Well, the second floor they consider is the bungalows out by the pool at the Hollywood Roosevelt. They have all the bungalows, and they're like 200, from 206, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then the third floor up starts in the towers.
Yeah, it seems like that third floor, there was some kind of demonic entity there. The one that was in the closet and the one that pushed you. Maybe it was the same entity. Boy, that third floor is definitely had some action.
Yeah, I was like, whoa. So we would always be extra on our toes. Whoever was, hey, watch out for the third or fourth floor. I don't know, remember exactly, but it was one of those two, if not both.
Yeah, that's crazy. Where does it go from there?
Yeah, me and Todd. This time, Todd and I, when we used to go on our patrols, we're standing in the lobby, and we'd go down there like when we were ready to go back to the office, and we'd talk to the PBX operators, and just kind of kill some time and keep an eye on the lobby at the same time. I guess about 2 or 3 weeks before that, because we would get a lot of the band tours, like the people that played at the Hollywood Bowl, some, like top name people. They would stay there, and the drivers, from the equipment buses and that would, transport the band members and stuff, they would always park at the Roosevelt Hotel, and they'd get a room for the night. So one of the drivers had died in a room. This was like 2 or 3 weeks before. A friend of his who was also a driver, for band members and stuff, and a roadie, that's the word I was looking for the people that would play at the Hollywood Bowl. He was in town with whatever band was playing there at the time, and I guess the guy who had passed away a couple weeks before at the hotel was a friend of his. So he requested, hey, out of respect, I just want to pay some respects to the last place that my friend was at. Can I have his room? And we didn't know this till we were talking to the, front desk and PBX people because we heard, and then the elevator like opened, and this was like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and this guy comes out of the elevator, and he's carrying his boots, and his pants are unbuckled, and he's got his shirt halfway on, and he was just like freaked out, and he threw like his bag up on the counter, and he goes, I'm out of here, man, I'm checking out. He goes, I don't know what's going on, but there's something in that room. And he goes, hey, my friend died in that room, so I don't know what's going on, but there's something in there. So me and my partner, we just like looked at each other, and they went ahead and checked him out and everything, and then he left. So I don't know, he slept in the bus or whatever. So then we decided instead of checking the room because we would get stuff like that all the time, we just went up and double locked it, and then left it for the morning shift to check. Because to be honest, we were like too scared to go in there.
So that was a common occurrence for guests to come down scared and say, "We're checking out."
No, not at all. This, like I said, this was the graveyard shift. On that graveyard shift, that's when pretty much all the stuff would happen. Or if anything did happen in the daytime, it wasn't made known.
Do you remember or do you recall what floor that was for that particular incident?
No, I wish I could remember, exact floors and room numbers and all of this. But that was like 1991, 92, yeah.
So, in general, did people race down to the lobby claiming there's something going on in the room and they want out of there? Did that happen often?
It was pretty often. It was often enough that, like I said, even in the security booth, we had a special little file of paranormal encounters, if something like that happened. Like I said, it wasn't like a daily thing, but it was often enough to like make note of.
Sure. And I meant to ask about that journal that you had brought up. Did you ever flip through that and read some of the accounts that were logged in there? Did your curiosity take you to that?
No, to be honest, at that time it was back. If it would have been today, oh man, it would have been a gold mine because the way social media is and everything, and the interest. But back then, paranormal and all that kind of stuff, it was more of a hush hush kind of thing. It wasn't as popular as it is today. It was just like if you knew, you knew. He's had an experience. Oh yeah, he's one of us. He knows. But it wasn't real popular. And honestly, it was kind of taboo. They didn't want you spreading ghost stories around the hotel. Because then people wouldn't want to stay there. Because, like I said, back then didn't have as much notoriety.
Yeah, that's the truth. I remember that time. And what happened next?
Next, we were back in the because, like I said, we would always like take our little break, between 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning down by PBX and talk to the front desk and the operators and everything. So we were there, and then the switchboard rang, and she goes, "Oh, hold on, you guys." So hello, hello, and she kept saying hello. She goes, "That's the damnedest thing. This room keeps calling like all night, and there's nobody checked in there." And I was like, "What room is it?" And I remember this was because it was 928, and that was Montgomery Clift's room, the room where he stayed when he was filming From Here to Eternity. And he like practiced with his bugle in the hallway and all that kind of stuff. So we had heard about that room, and then I looked. My friend Kenny was working on the shift with me that night, so I said, "All right, let's go check it out." So we went up there, and we had master keys, so we could get into any room if we needed to. So then we knocked on the door, nobody answered. Knocked again. I said, "Okay, let's go see what's going on." So we opened the door and we went in, and it was a quick left turn because like the wall was right in front of you. It was a smaller room, and now then we looked down about a half a hallway, and the room was just like trashed. Like the bed was all messed up, and the chair was knocked over. And then we're just like trying to get our heads around that, because nobody's been checked in there, and they always clean the rooms. The maids do as soon as somebody's checked out, so it's in good shape for the next person that checks in. So we're just trying to get our heads around that. And then out of nowhere, like this big, it was like a wind without breeze. It was like a force. And it just like, wow, came like right towards both of us. And Kenny was standing a little bit in front of me. And it just like pushed him back into me and pushed both of us against the wall. And then it just, boom, went right by us. And like, because the bathroom door was like pulled to, it wasn't latched. It was just like pulled to, like pretty much closed. And it just boom slammed that door. And then right above us, there was like this vent, and we heard this like this real high pitched, like squeaky, talking in tongues voice. So then we just like freaked out, and we were like the Three Stooges, just bumping into each other. We ran out, locked the door, and just went down and made a report about it, and told it to the PBX operator. Then we all, had our conversation about, how we had heard that room was like haunted and everything, and then just left it for the next incoming morning shift. You guys follow up on that. We're done.
What other reports from staff did you recall hearing at that time? Like, did your coworkers ever experience the same entity like you did? Did they ever see that dark shadow? What do you know about what they experienced?
No, because after a while we would, it would go, hey man, did you hear about what happened the other night and this and that? But like I said, it was like you were almost scared to talk about it because it was like taboo for some reason. It was like, oh, shh, don't talk about that too loud, that kind of thing. But I had heard stories from some of the maids that had worked there for years, and but they would talk quiet about it. Oh yeah, I remember, I was in there and something pushed me and the door slammed or this fell off of the table or that kind of a thing. But not anything like in major detail. But it was going on. But like I said, for some reason, it was like a taboo thing that okay, don't talk about that, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I remember that time. That's pretty much what it was like regarding the paranormal.
Yeah.
And where did it go from there?
From there, I remember another time it was my turn to go on patrol, and I think it was Todd that was working on shift with me that night. And I said, okay. And this was my favorite spot. I never really got to go up there because it was called the Gable and Lombard Suite because Clark Gable and Carol Lombard used to I guess they lived there for a while back in the 40s or whenever it was that they were married. So I was like, oh cool, I'm gonna go check out the Gable Lombard Suite. So I went up, patrolled all the rest of the floors, and then I got to the roof. But it was in the tower. The entrance to the suite was in the tower. So opened the door, went in and checked out the whole downstairs, and then I went upstairs. That's where the major bedroom and a whole like living area was. So I went up in there and I checked everything, checked the bathroom, checked the closets. Uh, then I like sat down on the bed and I was like, wow, man, I'm gonna take a little break. So I called down to the office and I said, hey, uh, Todd, I'm gonna take a little 10-minute break up here. He was like, all right, cool, man, I'll call you if anything happens. So I took my jacket off and I'm laying on the bed. And then I was just like, oh man, Gable and Lombard. And I was thinking about, the Hollywood history. And then I heard the bathroom door, which was just to the right of the bed. It was a pretty good sized room. It like just like moved a little bit, but it was enough to like creak. So I kind of like raised my head up because I was laying down and I looked at it and like nothing happened. So then I got up real slow and I, went over and I pushed it open and that force again, it was like a wind without a breeze, just like whoom, like rushed by me, and it went to where the back door was that exited to the patio. There was a wooden patio out there on the roof, on the roof of the hotel, and but it didn't like open a door or anything. It just like went through the door, and it was like a glass door, and the curtains like whooshed like there was a big wind. And I was just like, whoa. So I grabbed my jacket, got on the radio. Todd, man, I don't know what's going on up here, but I'm headed back to the office. Come back up here with me when I get there. So I got down back to the office, I told him what had happened. He goes, all right, let's go check it out. So we went all the way back up to the gable Lombard suite. We made the same steps that I did when I first, made the initial patrol. Checked out the bottom, went up the stairs, and I told him, okay, man, this is what happened. And I walked him through it. So then we went to that back patio door that went out on that little wood patio on the roof, and we opened it, and we walked out on the wooden patio, and we're looking around, flashlights and everything, checked out the whole rooftop. And then we went back to the patio, and we're just standing there. And then we were like, hey, remember when this happened? We were just kind of reliving when all these kind of different things were happening. So then we sat down. There was a couple chairs out there, and then we were just kind of, talking about it a little bit. And then the wooden door from the patio railing, the little latch, lifted, and and then the door swung open, and we heard like steps, and we just like jumped up, both of us, and just ran through it, and then went across the roof and opened up another door that would take us down the stairway, and went back to the office. And then we just filed that report too and said, hey, the morning guys can follow this up, we're done.
Another one for the morning crew. That is just insane.
Yeah, it was like, after a while, it was like, dude, okay, let's just make the report. Hey, the morning guys, you guys can figure this out. And then the main one that really got me, because this kind of like, it crossed the line and like went into the daytime. There was like a lot of smaller ones through the years, because I was there for 2 years, so a lot of stuff happens on each night of, 365 days. But the ones that I've been telling you about this evening are like the major ones that really stood out. And this one would be like the capper for me. Um, I had come in a little bit early because Eddie, he was, the supervisor, and he had called me and he said, hey, I was wondering if you can come in a little bit early. We had like a major incident at the hotel, and I don't know, man, I'm a little shook up about it. I was like, yeah, no problem, man. I'll be there, So I got there maybe 4 o'clock. It was in the afternoon, and he met me, when I came in, and he goes, wow. And I was like, wow, what happened, man? And this was around Thanksgiving time. He said, wow, we just found this lady dead in her room. And I was like, oh man, what happened, And he goes, well, her family hadn't heard from her, and it was Thanksgiving. So, they called because they knew that she had come to California and she had checked into the Roosevelt because, she liked Hollywood and all that. And he said, so we knocked on the door and everything, and then we tried to open it with, the master key, but it was dead bolted from the inside. So she had locked it from the inside, it appeared. And he goes, so then, the janitors came up, tech crew janitors, and they had to literally break into the room through the deadbolt. And he said that when they went in there, the room was just trashed, and it looked like she had been thrown across the room against the wall, and she was like wedged down between the bed and the wall, and the bed was like pushed tight against her. And he was just like really, upset. And then I said, wow, man, you gonna be okay? And he goes, yeah, yeah. And then I go, what else, man? Something else is bothering you. What's going on? And he said, I don't know, man. He goes, I went up on the roof just to like get some air and just to chill out and get my head around this, finding her like that. And he goes, something like was like not pushing me, but I felt like something drawing me towards the edge of the roof. And then these voices in my head kept telling me, jump, jump, jump. So that like really freaked him out. And then I think he even like took like a month vacation after that. So that was like last major thing that I, vividly remember, like, the other incidents that I had told you about.
This lady, around how old was she? Do you recall?
Yeah, she was like maybe mid to late 20s, She wasn't like a teenager or nothing. I didn't see her, but, he said she looked, like a normal lady, you know what I mean? Like, didn't look like anybody that was upset or anything or had any problems. And I guess her family said, she was a big fan of Hollywood and, all that kind of stuff and the movie industry. And she wanted to go to Hollywood and stay at the Roosevelt Hotel. And then the Roosevelt Hotel wasn't like anybody could just check in. It was like most people that went there, you had to have a little money. And
Do you recall regarding this incident, whatever became of it, the cause of her death? Did you ever hear of any police report or any news report on the findings of what might have happened in that room?
no, not at all. It was kind of like that was the majorest thing because that involved a death. And but it was like the other paranormal things that would happen. It was like, okay, don't talk too much about that, kind of thing. But I was figuring with the death, but at that time it wasn't. I think it made a couple little blurbs in the newspaper kind of thing, but nothing major. And then I remember one time there was a political thing. This was, whoa, 92. It was towards the last year I worked there, and I don't want to mention the name of the politician, but you definitely know her. She was the wife of someone who stayed there. There was this big political function in town, and I came to work. I got there about 6 o'clock, and there was all these police like lined up by this one entrance on, I think it's Orange Street, and there was like yellow tape and all that. And apparently somebody had reportedly jumped off the roof, and obviously they were dead. But yeah, the details on that wasn't talked about too much either.
Wow, and interesting that your coworker had that one incident where he was, hearing those voices kind of pushing him to do that very same thing.
Yeah, and he was a steadfast guy too. He wasn't, you know, I had never, the years that I'd known him, ever heard him talk of anything like that at all. And then I kind of put two and two together. I'll go, I thought of that too. I said, wow, that's wild because Eddie had said he heard voices in his head telling him to jump off the roof when he was up there, trying to get his head together from finding that, the dead body in that room. And then this wasn't that long after that either. And I was like, well, wait a minute. If they got all these, because then my curiosity got to going. And I was like, well, wait a minute. If this was a really highly political thing, a lot of politicians and they got all kinds of security. How could somebody get up on the roof and jump off the roof, when they're patrolling there? We couldn't even patrol because they had it blocked off because they had their security.
Yeah, that's a mystery for sure. The other reports that I found in my little research of the hauntings there, I'm just wondering if you're aware of or if you ever heard of any of those. In particular, the ghost of a young girl. Did you ever hear about that particular ghost?
No, the only ghost was even talked about was Marilyn Monroe's spirit was supposed to be seen by her mirror, and then there was supposed to be a ghost in the Blossom Room. People would feel like a wind without a breeze go by them, or doors would open and close by themselves, or lights would go off and on by themselves. There was supposed to be, or there was talk of, a spirit that was in the Blossom Room, and then Montgomery Clift's room and Marilyn's room. But yeah, I never heard about the little girl.
Yeah, I did find where the report of two ghosts said to haunt the ballroom, a tuxedoed man and a man in a white suit. I wonder if one of those is what you had heard of. And when you said people feeling like something, a presence brush past them, that's a common report there as well. People feel a lot of cold spots, presence brushing past them, also whispering, pacing, the sound of a giggling child. That place is just chock full of activity. And I wonder, I haven't heard anything recently, but I wonder today what might be going on there still.
Yeah, because I had noticed too that because usually you'll hear like poltergeist stuff, and like fun things or prankster kind of stuff like knocking a table over or slamming a door or something like that or things moving. And yeah, but these just had that little extra. Wow, that's a little dark. You know what I mean?
Oh, no doubt. That's a lot of dark. I mean, it was physical with you. That's straight up poltergeist entity. That's just crazy.
Yeah, the that dark shadow in the closet and that growl I will never forget. And then seeing indentations on the carpet like half a foot in front of me, like walking, and then being pushed into the wall. Those are the two, like, that's like, okay, I'm a believer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you started there a skeptic and you left a believer, no doubt about it. That's top level right there, what you experienced. It also said security staff had reported seeing a being swimming in the pool after hours. Did you ever
Wow.
hear anything about that at the pool area?
For some reason, I always stayed away from the pool area. I don't know. I can't, I'm conscious of it now, looking back, and I was going, wow, that's because I would always, for some reason, go, I'm not going to patrol the pool. You know what I mean? For some reason, I would always stay away from the pool area.
Maybe it was your sixth sense. Something was telling you to stay away from the pool.
Yeah, looking back at it now, that's coming to my. I was like, wow, I would always say, hey, Todd, you want to do the Tropicana area? I don't feel like doing that. And I would always have I don't feel like doing that. Before I left Hollywood in 2016, I would always go to the Roosevelt every year because they would have AFI Fest there. And I would remember and I would look around, hey, is any, I wonder if anything spooky still happens here. But it always seems so like updated and, they made a few little modifications to the hotel and stuff. So I don't know if they like over refurbished it and drove the ghosts out or what. But it was never had like a bad vibe. And I even went into the Blossom Room. I went in there because they had, I think one year they had like a bunch of movie costumes in there displayed, like different stars wore from each movie. And yeah, the room, it just felt light. It didn't feel like it did when I used to work there, because I know through the years, all the way up till 2016, I had heard and read that, they had like big money investors and, like big corporations. I can't remember the name of it that had um, bought the hotel and livened it up and refurbished it. So maybe behind the scenes, because I remember, like I said, back in the '90s, it was all taboo and hush hush. So maybe they just kept that going on and did all the whatever they might have done behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's very possible. And especially, like you said, it felt light. So that dark energy's gone. They may very well have brought some people in to drive that stuff out.
Thank you for having me on. I just wanted to get that out because there's people you see through your life when you start talking about ghosts and stuff. I'll tell a couple stories and they'll, wow, that was pretty wild. But I always like carried that around, and thanks for having me on to get that out. Appreciate it.
Of course, no. I thank you for coming on and sharing what you experienced there at the Hollywood Roosevelt. Thank you very much, Michael. I really appreciate you coming and telling your story.
Yeah, thank you again. And it was a wonderful place to work, though. It was a wonderful experience all the time.
Ghosts aside, it's a beautiful place and a great place to work.
Yeah, just make sure you're in bed after 10 o'clock. So
For sure, for sure. Thanks again, Michael.
thank you.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate you being here. If you have an account to share and would like to be on the show, email me at show@accountsoftheparanormal.com and tell me what you saw. You can catch this show wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as our website, accountsoftheparanormal.com, where you can access full episodes and links to all our socials and our YouTube channel, where you can listen and watch along with visual images. And if you're a fan of what you heard here, please like, share, follow, subscribe. I appreciate the support. I'll see you next time.